Ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that you're okay. I'm also fine. Today, I want us to examine what could be the problem or the beef between the governor of Siaya, James Orengo, and the President of the Republic, the Honorable William Ruto. Why am I saying there seems to be a beef? Because if you carefully listen to how Orengo talks in reference to President Ruto, you would agree with me that there is something going on deep down, especially inside Orengo. This has not been expressed from Ruto's side, but Orengo has not hidden his dislike for the president, to the point, ladies and gentlemen, that Orengo is willing to now go against Raila Odinga in as far as the broad-based government is concerned. Orengo has said that any alliance with William Ruto is bad for the country, that Ruto is a liar, Ruto is a thief, Ruto is everything. And Orengo has reiterated these things every now and then. The question is this just out of his desire for good governance and belief in democracy, or something deeper is going on to the level of a political hatred or beef? I am persuaded the latter is true, because it's not as if James Orengo is not known for standing for democracy. Yes, he is. But like I told you in a previous video, that James Orengo has learned political survival, that when it favors him, James Orengo will be a tyrant. Remember, this is the same guy who made it clear that he would not allow UDA in Siaya. So if you think that James Orengo is about democracy and multi-party democracy, no, he's not. He made it clear, by the way, that he would not allow anybody from UDA to speak in an event where he is. Because according to him, Luo Nyanza, especially Siaya, was a one-party dictatorship that was supposed to be dominated by ODM, and any other party that came, especially UDA, was not welcome. So that is James Orengo for you. When it favors him, Orengo can be a dictator. And when things don't go well for him, Orengo can decide to mutate into a freedom fighter. So his opposition to the broad-based government and even attack on President Ruto, I don't think they are based on principle. My belief is that something happened between the president and James Orengo, and Orengo is yet to move on. That is what I want to explain in this video. What is the real reason why James Orengo hates, and let me use hate in this case, hates President William Ruto, politically speaking? If that is something you're interested in, stay tuned, watch till the end of the video. And if you're watching for the first time, just take a moment, subscribe to the channel so that when we produce a video of this nature, you will be notified. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it is not usual for James Orengo to hold political positions that jeopardizes his current position. Remember when President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga were in a handshake, James Orengo never uttered a word, even though James Orengo and others had insisted that President Uhuru killed several Luos. In fact, they used the word massacred, that President Uhuru had massacred Luos. So if it was the issue of James Orengo being against working with somebody who has done something wrong, I have told you here, James Orengo would have never worked with Kibaki, and James Orengo, of course, most certainly would have never worked with Uhuru Kenyatta. But he did work, and actually he pushed everything that Uhuru Kenyatta sent to the floor of the Senate, and Orengo was there to defend it. He never even uttered a word when bodies were being found in his own county. So it's not about him being this liberator who is trying to change the world and is against injustice. No. James Orengo has problem with President Ruto, not Raila Odinga. I don't think James Orengo is like saying, I'm going after Raila Odinga, I want to inherit his... No. We even looked at that in another video, and we found that James Orengo doesn't have what it takes to topple Raila Odinga from Luo Nyanza politics. However, he cannot hide his dislike for President Ruto. And I say there is a main reason. The main reason, in my opinion, is because if Ruto is going to be supported into 2027, then James Orengo does not have Raila on whose coat he hangs to be elected. But then there is something deeper, ladies and gentlemen. And that something deeper is one William Oduor. So for those of you who don't know William Oduor is the deputy governor of Siaya. The famous deputy governor of Siaya, because he was impeached by the assembly, Siaya assembly that is, brought to Senate, and people got to learn that he was sitting on a 1 million shilling seat. It was even taken to the Senate so that leaders could at least have a feel of what a 1 million shillings seat was. But I digress. William Oduor was a compromise running mate. It is not as if William Oduor and Orengo share political values. Remember, William Oduor is the infamous contestant whose victory was like snatched by Rasanga during the ODM nominations. He later, I think, ran as an independent and did not make it. But William Oduor was a compromise candidate because he comes from Alego. Alego has the highest number of voters in Siaya. And so for you to win Siaya gubernatorial race, you need Alego and Ugenya in your basket. And William Oduor coming from Alego and Orengo coming from Ugenya, that was a combination. But not that these people shared any value. This was just a political compromise to ensure that Gumbo did not win, because they had a serious threat in the person of Gumbo, who was running as an independent. And so Oduor and Orengo came together, formed a ticket, and won the election. Of course, Gumbo contested, but they won the election nonetheless. So, why is Oduor the main issue here? Oduor, like I told you, was impeached. Orengo wanted to replace his deputy. And he was not going to be the first person to do that. These governors usually find a way of replacing a deputy who is not towing the line. And from the look of things, Oduor had started asking questions about how money was being used and spent in Siaya County. This rubbed the powers that be in Siaya, which I'm persuaded included Raila, the wrong way. And so the next obvious thing they did was to call on the MCS to impeach William Oduor. And William Oduor was impeached overwhelmingly, was brought to the Senate, and then something happened. In Senate, Kenya Kwanza has the majority. And so this was an ODM governor, a deputy governor that had been impeached, and it was now upon a Senate that was being controlled by Kenya Kwanza, or in this case, let me say by William Ruto, to help Orengo get rid of this deputy. Of course, you know what happened. The Senate did not convict William Oduor. He was cleared of all wrongdoing. So Orengo found himself with a deputy governor that he does not like, that he would have loved to replace a long time ago for politics of 2027, but who is now in office. Whether Orengo gives him roles or not, he would be there, he would be earning. And in the meantime, he would be criticizing James Orengo from within and exposing his leadership in Siaya. In preparation, wait for this, in preparation for 2027. Because from the look of things, William Oduor is vying against Orengo in 2027. And James Orengo feels that all this were brought about by William Ruto. That had Ruto allowed Senate, That is the belief of the likes of James Orengo, that President Ruto has that serious influence in Senate, that he would be the one to decide whether somebody is impeached or not. So Orengo believed that had Ruto allowed Senate to get rid of his deputy Oduol, he would be in the clear because he would have a deputy that he controls, but also who is not going to challenge him come 2027. And remember, if Oduol was impeached, he could not vie come 2027. So it was a good deal. Oduol is powerful, is influential, but is critical of Orengo's government. What do? You come together, you impeach him. If he is impeached, he's barred from vying, so he is no longer a threat in 2027. But thanks to Kenya Kwanza controlled Senate, Oduol was saved, and Orengo James has not been very kind to Ruto ever since. I can tell you, before that, James Orengo was even one presiding when Ruto was being crowned the Luo elder. That's James Orengo. James Orengo was one of the people who first, and you can check this on record, ladies and gentlemen, who first talked about the handshake between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. You can check when William Ruto went to Siaya. James Orengo, those initial days, before the Mandabados, those initial days, James Orengo made it very clear that he would prefer a handshake between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Now, what's changed? Why is he now so much against that? Because, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, Orengo blames William Ruto for saving Oduol. That is what I think is going on here. Orengo feels like Ruto would have played at all or allowed the senators, assuming he believes Ruto controls the senators. So he blames him for allowing his enemy to stay in power, to antagonize him come 2027. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what my opinion is on the main reason why James Orengo is against William Ruto. I don't think it is based on any principles or that he feels, no. James Orengo is malleable. I've told you, when it fits him, he can shut up. When it fits him, he can even be a dictator, and even did say that he does not want any other political party in his county. So that is not some principled Democrat you can rely on. But one thing is certain, that he does not like the fact that William Oduol was not impeached, and he blames William Ruto for that, considering that he is persuaded William Ruto and Oduol are friends. I hope you found value in that. That is what I wanted to share with you. If you think there is more to this than I've shared, you can share in the comment section. But I'm persuaded that Oduol is a key factor in Orengo's hatred for William Ruto. Otherwise, in case you missed the video on why James Orengo cannot replace Raila Odinga in Luo Nyanza, watch it here.